Hello and welcome back to the Business English podcast from Learning English Pro. I'm Jer, your guide through real-world English for work, life, and everything in between. If you're brand new here, hit the subscribe so you never miss an episode. We publish new episodes every Monday. You can also support the channel by becoming a student member. It's just $4.99 a month and gives you access to exclusive worksheets, bonus materials, and my complete video archive. Now this week, we begin a brand new 5-part series focused on money in business, from how cultures around the world discuss finances to the best phrases for negotiating your salary. This series will give you the vocabulary, confidence, and cultural awareness to speak the language of money fluently in a global context. In this episode, we'll begin with the big picture, how people around the world talk about money and business, and then we'll zoom into interviews, specifically how to answer the question, what are your salary expectations? And if you are a student member or thinking about joining, make sure to download the exclusive worksheet that goes with this episode. It includes a glossary of business English idioms, some reading for you, and exercises to practice speaking about finances. And a big shout out to Donnie M, one of our student members, who asked this week, what does it mean when someone says we're bleeding cash? Donnie, great question. It means the company is losing money rapidly. Picture it like a wound that doesn't stop. It's dramatic and it's serious. If you have a business English question, write it in the comments below and I'll get to it in the next episode. Okay, let's dive right in. How people talk about money at work can be as much a product of culture as of vocabulary. In some cultures, discussing money is direct and open. In others, it's wrapped in etiquette and euphemism. Let's compare a few regions to see the difference in language, tone, and expectations when money comes into business contexts. In the United States, there's a famous direct approach to business. Americans often use straightforward language about finances. Terms like bottom line, profit, and ROI flow freely in meetings. Phrases like time is money reflect a cultural expectation to be efficient and results focused. Discussing company financials or budgets is common, and enthusiasm about making money is usually not hidden. Celebrating a revenue milestone might be done quite openly. That said, when it comes to personal money, like one's salary, even Americans can be somewhat reserved. It's legal in the US for employees to discuss pay, and openness is encouraged to ensure fairness, yet many still feel uncomfortable doing so. For example, young tech workers have started breaking the taboo by sharing salaries on spreadsheets or sites like Glassdoor, pushing for transparency. Still, context matters. An American might freely talk about cutting costs or boosting profits in a meeting, but politely skirt around asking a colleague, how much do you make, unless the relationship is close. The tone in US workplaces regarding money is often confident and positive. It's common to hear informal slang like bucks for dollars or idioms like bang for the buck to mean value, even in professional settings. Overall, US business culture encourages a practical, open dialogue about money in terms of business performance, while personal compensation discussions happen with a bit more caution, often left to private conversations or formal reviews. Now let's move across the pond. The British have a reputation for being polite and somewhat reserved, and this extends to talking about money. In UK workplaces, there's typically a more understated tone when money is discussed. Openly bragging about profits or one's pay would be seen as poor taste. British professionals tend to use indirect language and a touch of humour to ease into financial topics. For instance, rather than bluntly saying, "we don't have the budget," a Brit might say something like, "we'll have to be prudent with our spending this quarter." Slang like quid for pound sterling or penny pinching, meaning frugal saving, is common in informal talk. But even then, it's often accompanied by a light chuckle or self-depreciation to avoid coming off as too serious about money. Discussing personal salary is especially delicate. A survey found most UK workers are embarrassed to talk about their pay. In fact, only about 1 in 4 employees in Britain felt comfortable sharing their salary with a co-worker or even their boss. Salary secrecy is almost embedded in the culture. Whereas an American might straightforwardly negotiate a raise by touting their achievements, a British employee might hint at the subject softly or wait for their manager to bring up pay. Etiquette in the UK leans toward not making others uncomfortable. If money must be mentioned, adding a phrase like, "if you don't mind me asking," is common when inquiring about costs or salaries. Overall, the British approach money with a bit of formality, understatement, and a preference for privacy, all wrapped in a dry wit that softens money talk in business settings. In my homeland of Ireland, Irish business culture shares some similarities with the UK in terms of its modesty, but with its own twist of warmth and humour. In Ireland, as in Britain, it's generally frowned upon to be too boastful about money. The Irish do not appreciate overly flashy talk about wealth. Someone bragging about big earnings or lavish spending might quickly be taken down a peg by a humorous remark. Instead, discussions of money often come with a light touch. It's not uncommon for Irish colleagues to joke about budget woes, often with a wink and a quip about the office being on a shoestring budget, rather than directly complain. In workplace meetings, people tend to be practical about money. Ireland does have a history of valuing financial prudence, but also personable. For example, instead of a hard-nosed, "where are the profits?" an Irish manager might say with a smile, "we'll need to mind the pennies so the pounds mind themselves," echoing a common proverb. Talking about personal salary or financial success can be taboo in social settings. Many Irish consider it private or even a bit vulgar to ask someone's earnings. Indeed, Ireland is a country where historically people might downplay their wealth to appear humble. When negotiating business deals or salaries, Irish professionals often favour a friendly, low-pressure approach, using charm and storytelling to make a point indirectly. They also expect a bit of small talk before diving into numbers. Rushing straight to money can be seen as overly aggressive. An interesting aspect is that humour is a key part of Irish communication. Even serious topics like budget cuts might be introduced with a joke. "Looks like it's pints of water for the next quarter, lads." This adds emotional engagement and eases tension around money discussions. In short, Ireland's culture encourages you to talk about money with a smile and a story, but not with a boast. From the observations from these cultures, we can see that nobody likes a bragger. Whether in the US or UK, China or Chile, being seen as being too money-minded or boastful can damage trust. The Y survey of millennials worldwide found every cultural background pointed towards the disdain of a bragger when it comes to money. So while the style of money talk changes, a bit of humility and respect goes a long way everywhere. So now let's dig down into some English language. We're going to cover some real business English idioms and expressions for money. In business, English speakers use a mix of formal terms, idioms, and slang to talk about money. For ESL learners, understanding these expressions is a key way to sounding natural and grasping what colleagues mean. Coming up is my curated list of business English idioms and phrases related to money, ranging from formal to informal, with definitions and examples. First up, we have the bottom line. In finance, the bottom line refers literally to the last line of an income statement, profit or loss. Figuratively, it means the core result or conclusion. Let's use it in an example. Our bottom line improved by 10% this year, which means the company made more profit. In general conversation, you might also hear the bottom line is, meaning the essential point. Let's move on to burn rate. This is a common term in startups and finance. A high burn rate means a company is spending a lot quickly. An example sentence would be, "We need to reduce our burn rate to extend our runway." And I've just mentioned runway here. What is that? This term paints the picture of a plane taking off. You need enough runway or you crash. So in terms of finance, a runway is the amount of time a company has before it runs out of money, given current expenses. An example sentence would be, with our current burn rate, we have a 12-month runway, so we'll need more investment by next year. Let's move on to the break-even point. This is the point at which revenue equals costs, and it means no profit and no loss. It's often used in planning. When a project or company breaks even, it means the expenses for that project or company is covered. Our example is, our break-even point for this product is selling 500 units per month. After that, every sale is profit. Our next phrases are a duo, in the red or in the black. In the red means you're losing money. If you're in the black, it means you're profitable. So we could say, the new restaurant was in the red for the first 6 months, but now it's finally in the black. Cash flow is the movement of money in and out of a business. Companies pay close attention to cash flow. Even a profitable business can fail if cash flow is poor. Let's use it in an example. We have strong sales, but our cash flow is a problem because clients pay invoices very late. Our final phrase for the podcast today is a cash cow. A cash cow is a product or a business unit that consistently generates a lot of cash with little investment. This idiom likens a profitable business unit to a cow that you can always milk. And our last sentence example is, Windows is Microsoft's cash cow. It brings in steady revenue year after year without minimal marketing. If you're a student member, check out the worksheet. There's lots more phrases and idioms on there for you to learn. These idioms and phrases make business English colourful and concise. Using them appropriately will make an ESL speaker sound like a native speaker in the boardroom. Talking about boardrooms, let's take a look at two very famous companies and the very different cultures they have around talking about money. Google is the giant tech from Silicon Valley, and it has cultivated an image of openness and analytical decision-making, and this extends to how it handles money and compensation with employees. In the early days, Google was somewhat secretive about pay, like many companies. But Googlers, Google employees, took initiatives to open things up. In 2015, for example, a Googler created an internal spreadsheet where employees voluntarily shared their salaries, bonuses, which spread widely and famously, and it broke the taboo on discussing wages. Management didn't shut it down. In fact, this movement pushed Google to examine its own pay practices. Google has since tried to position itself as a leader in pay transparency. The company began conducting annual pay equity analysis and has adjusted salary to close gaps. While Google doesn't publish all salaries, it has encouraged a culture where employees feel they can talk about compensation. Culturally, Google's approach to money talk is data-driven. They use metrics to decide bonuses. They share information in all-hands meetings about the company's financial performance, within legal limits of course, and they often frame monetary rewards as recognition for innovation and impact rather than just money for its own sake. For instance, rather than a manager saying, "We can't afford that tool," a Googler might say, "Let's look at the cost-benefit analysis. Does it justify the expense?" Aligning with their analytical mindset. Another aspect is perks and benefits. Google was famous for providing free meals, shuttles, etc., essentially putting money into quality of life benefits. Internally, the tone around those spending decisions is often tied to values. We invest in employees to enable them to do their best work, rather than just dollar figures. However, Google has also learned that transparency can have consequences. Being open can prompt employees to negotiate or raise concerns. A Forbes article noted that transparency isn't just aligning pay with market, but also creating equality for every employee in the workplace. So Google's communication around pay often emphasizes fairness and equality. For example, they may acknowledge when they've found discrepancies and fix them. In summary, Google's style of money talk is open, egalitarian, and backed by data. You'll hear Googlers comfortably use terms like equity in both stock and fairness sense, and discussing compensation as one piece of a larger mission. It reflects Silicon Valley's modern ethos. Talk about money, but link it to impact and do so with as much openness as possible to build trust. Amazon, in many ways, is the yin to Google's yang when it comes to spending culture. Founded by Jeff Bezos, Amazon has long been obsessed with frugality and customer value, and that shows in how Amazonians talk about money internally. One of Amazon's leadership key principles is literally this: frugality. Accomplish more with less. Constraints breed resourcefulness. So, from the top down, there's an ethos that costs should be minimized and efficiency maximized. Jeff Bezos once famously quipped, "Your margin is my opportunity," meaning if competitors have fat profit margins, Amazon sees a chance to offer lower prices and win customers, even if that means Amazon's own margins are thinner. This quote encapsulates Amazon's aggressive approach to money. They are willing to sacrifice short-term profits to gain market share or scale. In internal discussions, this can translate to a very sharp pencil on budgets. For example, a project proposal at Amazon will be challenged. Is this the most cost-effective way? Could we do it cheaper? Teams often frame requests in terms of customer impact and cost. An Amazon manager might say, "We'll invest in this feature because it will drive customer loyalty, but we need to keep the cost per user under X dollars." They use metrics like cost per return on investment and are very metrics given, but with a frugal twist. A well-known story in business is that Amazon's offices used to have doors turned into desks, a symbol of their frugality. While that's more legend than widespread practice now, it shows how even furniture was a way to communicate we don't splurge. When it comes to compensation, Amazon is also distinct. They historically offered lower base salaries than some tech peers, but they made up for it in stock, so employees think like owners. Internally, discussions about compensation often emphasize total compensation and stock value over just salary. Budget meetings at Amazon are famously intense. Leaders are expected to know their numbers in detail. The language used is straightforward and often very numbers heavy. It's not uncommon to hear phrases like operating leverage, free cash flow, and variable costs in everyday discussions, even among non-finance teams. Such is the financial awareness expected. Publicly, Amazon's communications about money also reflect prudence. In earnings calls, they may highlight how they've managed to reduce fulfillment costs or improve efficiency. Even success is framed sometimes in savings. We've managed to lower our costs of delivering packages by X%, which allows us to pass savings to customers or invest in faster shipping. Shareholders' letters from Bezos often spoke about long-term value over short-term profits, making it clear that money for Amazon is a means to an end, rather than the end itself. In summary, at Amazon, money talk equals value talk. Employees learn to justify expenses by how it improves the value proposition. And when talking about money, there's also a moral undertone. Waste is bad, efficiency is good. That frugal tone is quite distinctive. It doesn't mean Amazon doesn't spend. They invest billions in new initiatives, but they talk about those investments as carefully calculated, not frivolous. One could imagine an Amazon employee half-jokingly saying, "Do we really need 2 pizza boxes for this meeting? One might do. Remember frugality?" I'm referencing here Amazon's famous 2-pizza team rule. Any team should be small enough to be fed by 2 pizzas, which itself is an analogy for smooth, efficient teams. So we've seen how money talk is never just about vocabulary. It's about tone, a culture, and emotional intelligence. Whether you're navigating a British boardroom, an American startup, or an Irish negotiation over coffee, your ability to adapt your language around money shows business fluency. Now, let's zoom in because for most professionals, there's one moment in particular where money talk gets really personal, and that's the job interview. If this is your first time with the Business English podcast, you'll be pleased to know that episodes 1 to 5 cover lots of interview English, so check those out after this episode. But right now, we're going to deal with that tricky moment when someone asks you, what are your salary expectations? Let's unpack that. If someone asks you this question, here's my golden rule. Don't answer the question immediately. Ask for the range. This is really key here. You could say, thanks for asking. Could you share the salary range for this role? And here is why this works. It puts the ball back in their court. It gives you crucial information. And most importantly, it lets you position yourself within that range without pricing yourself too high or too low. Once they share the range, and many will, you want to position yourself not at the top, but near the top. You're confident, but not unrealistic. For example, great, thank you. Based on my background and what I understand about the role, I'd be aiming toward the higher end of that range. This is breezy, it's confident, and it leaves room for discussion. You're not locking yourself into a number. Before we go on, let's break down a few common versions you might hear of this question and how to handle them with poise. They may ask it in a way like this. What kind of salary are you looking for? Or do you have a figure in mind? Or what are your expectations around compensation? And you can use variations using my strategy. I'm open, but I'd love to know what's budgeted for this position first. Or you could say, I'd be looking for a competitive package that reflects the scope of the role. Could you tell me what's typical for this position? And if they keep pressing you for a number, what can you say? Sure, assuming the full package includes benefits and bonuses, I'd be aiming for something in the region of X to Y. And here's where you can tip the balance. You could say something like, ideally closer to the top end, giving my experience and what I bring to the table. Now, let's say they make an offer, but it's lower than you expected. What would you say here? Thanks so much. I'm really excited about the role. I was hoping for something closer to X based on my experience and what I know about the market. Is there any flexibility here? This kind of language shows you're reasonable, professional, and that you know your worth without being too pushy. Let me repeat that key phrase. Is there any flexibility there? It's a polite, non-confrontational way of negotiating. And if they say no, you still have options. You could say, I understand. In that case, would it be possible to discuss other parts of the compensation package, like additional leave or professional development support? Salary is just one part of the equation. Benefits, bonus, flexibility, these all matter too. And how about if they don't bring up the salary at all? Here's how you ask it confidently but politely. Before we wrap up, I did want to ask about the compensation range for this role. Is that something we can discuss? Or you could say, would now be a good time to touch on salary expectations? Timing here is key. You don't ask this right at the start of the interview, but you don't want to leave it unspoken either. So everyone, that wraps up episode 6 of the Business English podcast. Remember, money talks. It's time to learn about how to talk about money in any business context. And you can do that right here with the Business English podcast from Learning English Pro. If you're a student member, head over to the membership tab and download the worksheet for this lesson now. It has exercises, articles, and an extended glossary for you to revise and really boost your English around this topic. Click like, drop a comment with your questions or business idioms you've heard lately, and subscribe so you don't miss a thing. Coming up next week, we're continuing our Money in Business series with episode 7, Tariffs, Trade Wars, and the Language of Global Commerce, a really big topic at the moment. If you have any questions about this, leave it in the comments and I'll bring it up in the next episode. You won't want to miss it. Until then, speak your business English boldly, ask smart questions, and most importantly, know your worth. I'm Jer, this is Learning English Pro, and I'll see you next Monday.